All right, let's dive into a topic that is, a huge deal for millions of families: childcare. We're going to get into that really complex web of rules that surrounds it and explore a pretty cool new idea, a science-based approach for how we might finally get things right.
I mean, we've all been there, right? This quote just perfectly nails the tension at the very heart of the childcare debate. Of course, we need rules to keep our kids safe. But what happens when those same rules make care impossible to find, or just way too expensive to afford? For decades now, this tension has created something that experts call the childcare trilemma. And really, it's the core challenge that has made finding a real solution so incredibly difficult. Okay, so think of it like a three-way balancing act. You have quality on one side, making sure kids are safe and learning. Then you have affordability. Can parents actually pay for this? And finally, there's access. Are there even any open spots? The problem is these three things are always in conflict. If you crank up the quality standards, the cost almost always goes up, which hurts affordability. If you try to lower costs to make it more affordable, quality might suffer. It's this constant, delicate, and frankly frustrating balancing act that makes the whole system feel totally stuck.
And this is not a new problem. The arguments we're having right now about childcare rules, they're basically part of a stalemate that has been going on for a very, very long time. Seriously, this debate goes back more than 50 years. You can see it right here. In the 70s, it was all about these big federal requirements. Then the 90s came along, and we got these national standards. And today, the big buzzword is deregulation. We've basically been having the same argument for generations. Which brings us to the political tug-of-war we see today. On one side, you have advocates for really strict standards. They'll point to this comprehensive guide called Caring for Our Children. It's got over 700 standards. And they'll say this is the absolute floor for safety. But on the other side, you have proponents of deregulation who look at that exact same list of 700-plus standards and say, see, this is the problem. This is overregulation, and it's what's choking the supply and making care unaffordable. So, with both sides completely dug in for the last 50 years, is there a way out? Is there some path forward that moves beyond just one side winning and the other side losing? Well, the answer might actually be to take this whole discussion out of the political arena entirely and put it right into the world of science. This whole new approach is built on something called the theory of regulatory compliance. Now, it sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually simple and really powerful. It says you don't need to check for 100% compliance on every single little rule. Instead, if you can identify a smaller, critical set of key rules, making sure those are followed can be just as effective at predicting overall safety and quality. It's all about being smarter and more targeted. And this isn't just some theory somebody cooked up. It's been championed and proven by Richard Fien, a top researcher who has literally spent his entire career trying to figure out how to improve childcare. His work is the foundation for this whole new way of thinking. So how does this actually work in the real world? How do you go from a giant mountain of regulations to a small, manageable, but still effective set of rules? Well, it's a process of scientific distillation. The starting point is that Caring for Our Children guide we mentioned. It is the gold standard, no question. It's based on all the latest science. But, as we've seen, with over 700 standards, it can be an absolutely daunting document for providers and for regulators. So, the first step was a risk assessment. Researchers basically went through that giant list and asked a simple question. If a provider doesn't follow this rule, what is the risk that a child could be seriously harmed? Just by using that scientific filter, they distilled that massive list all the way down to about 120 standards, a much more manageable list called stepping stones.
But they didn't stop there. The next step got even more focused. Using that key indicator method we talked about, they figured out which rules best predict overall safety. This distillation is the theory in action, and it brought the list down to just 65 core standards. This is the science-backed core.
So now we have it, this distilled, science-backed list of about 65 rules. So what do we do with it? Well, this is where we can start to build a much smarter path forward and maybe a real solution to that trilemma. So here's the proposal. Instead of just randomly slashing rules for political reasons, we use these 65 evidence-based standards as the starting point for every conversation. It totally shifts the debate away from what can we get rid of to what truly matters for keeping kids safe and well. Let me give you a real-world example of how this could work. Staff-child ratios.
This rule has a huge impact on cost and access. The old way of thinking looks at that rule all by itself. But a new, science-informed way lets us think outside the box and link it to another critical rule, the qualifications of the staff.
And this is where it gets really creative. You could allow a slightly higher staff-to-child ratio, and this is the crucial part, only for programs that have the most highly qualified teachers. Then the extra revenue from that additional child, it goes directly to that teacher as a salary increase. All of a sudden, you're addressing access, quality, and the critical problem of low teacher pay, all at the same time. It's a win-win-win.
So, we'll leave you with this thought. For 50 years, the childcare debate has been trapped in a political cycle. But what if the answer isn't about winning a political argument at all? What if it's about following the data and using science to find the rules that actually work for everyone?